What do we know? The kid died between August 5th and August 14th. Why? They say abuse at the hands of the parents, but where's the body? Jake, the father, was already on probation for beating his 10-month-old daughter so severely that the kid is blind and nearly brain dead. How do you not go to jail for that?
Breaking news from Riverside County, California. What prosecutors are about to present in court could completely dismantle the story that Jake and Rebecca Haro have been telling about their missing 7-month-old son, Emmanuel. Right now, as we speak, both parents sit in Riverside County Jail, each held on $1 million bail, charged with the murder of their own infant child. But here's what makes this case absolutely chilling. Emmanuel Haro's body has never been found. Yet prosecutors say they have enough evidence to prove these parents killed their baby and then orchestrated an elaborate cover-up that fooled law enforcement for over a week. If you want to stay updated on every twist in this case as it unfolds, subscribe right now, because what we're about to reveal shows this story is far from over, and the evidence prosecutors are preparing to present could shock even seasoned investigators. On September 4th, 2025, Jake Haro, 32, and Rebecca Haro, 41, entered not guilty pleas at the Riverside Hall of Justice. But behind the scenes, something far more disturbing was taking shape. The case that began as a frantic search for a kidnapped baby has transformed into what District Attorney Mike Hestron calls clear evidence of ongoing abuse that ultimately took his life. Today, we're going to break down exactly what prosecutors believe happened to baby Emmanuel, why they're confident enough to pursue murder charges without a body, and the timeline that investigators say exposes the parents' alleged deception. This is True Crime Chronicles, and this is the Emmanuel Haro case. To understand why this case has captured national attention, we need to go back to the night of August 14th, 2025. The call came to police on the night of August 14th and described every parent's worst nightmare. A mother claiming her baby had been kidnapped from a Yucaipa parking lot while she was changing his diaper. Rebecca Haro told investigators she had been attacked, that strangers had taken 7-month-old Emmanuel. The story triggered a massive search operation across Riverside and San Bernardino counties. Resources poured in. The community rallied. Amber alerts were issued, but something wasn't right from the beginning. The parents of 7-month-old Emmanuel Haro appeared in court Tuesday morning for a felony settlement conference in Riverside. A judge scheduled their next settlement conference for October 16th and set a preliminary hearing date for October 28th. The hearing that's now just weeks away has prosecutors and defense attorneys preparing for what could be one of the most challenging cases in recent memory, proving murder without the victim's body. The stakes couldn't be higher. The community that once searched desperately for Emmanuel now grapples with the possibility that the very people they were trying to help may have been responsible for his disappearance all along. Here's where the prosecution's case begins to take shape, and it starts with what they're calling a carefully constructed lie. According to court documents, the false report charges stem from Rebecca Haro's claims of Emmanuel's abduction on August 14th in Yucaipa, when Rebecca Haro claimed she was attacked in a parking lot when changing the baby's diaper. But investigators now believe this entire scenario was fabricated. The timeline prosecutors are building is devastating. New court documents have revealed 7-month-old Emmanuel Haro could have been killed as early as August 5th, 9 days before his mother reported him missing. 9 days. Think about that for a moment. If prosecutors are correct, Emmanuel was already dead for over a week while his parents maintained the charade of being concerned, loving parents. Based on the evidence, investigators determined a kidnapping in Yucaipa did not occur. It is believed Emmanuel is deceased, and the search to recover his remains is ongoing, the sheriff's department stated after the arrests. But what evidence led them to this conclusion? What made experienced investigators pivot so dramatically from a kidnapping case to a murder investigation targeting the parents themselves? The answer lies in what prosecutors describe as contradictions, inconsistencies, and forensic evidence that simply didn't support the parents' version of events. While search teams combed through wilderness areas and law enforcement followed up on hundreds of tips, investigators were quietly building a case that would turn this missing child investigation completely upside down. Prosecutors allege Emanuel was abused over time and killed sometime between August 5th and August 14th. His remains have not been found, despite weeks of searches in Riverside and San Bernardino counties. What makes the prosecution so confident they can secure convictions without Emanuel's body? The answer reveals a disturbing pattern that goes beyond this single tragic event. Jake Haro was convicted of willful child cruelty in 2023 for a 2018 incident against his daughter from another marriage. This isn't speculation or circumstantial inference. This is documented history. Jake Haro had already been convicted of abusing a child, his own daughter from a previous relationship. Here's where the legal strategy becomes clear. The prosecution is also pursuing Evidence Code Section 1109 that would allow prosecutors to introduce evidence showing a defendant has committed acts of abuse, even if they were not charged, to show a pattern of behavior. This is a critical piece of the prosecution's approach. They're not just trying to prove what happened to Emanuel in isolation. They're building a case that shows Jake Haro had a documented history of child abuse, and that this pattern of behavior escalated to the ultimate tragedy with baby Emanuel. But perhaps even more disturbing is what happened after Jake's previous conviction. "I'm giving you a chance," said the judge who gave him probation. "Don't mess it up." Hestron noted that despite Jake Haro's prior conviction, he was serving probation rather than a prison term. The implications are staggering. Instead of being incarcerated for child abuse, Jake Haro was given probation. He was allowed to remain in the community to have access to children, including baby Emanuel. And now prosecutors allege that second chance led to the death of a 7-month-old infant. The prosecution's timeline suggests Emanuel endured what they describe as ongoing abuse. This wasn't a single incident or moment of lost control. According to their theory, this baby suffered repeated abuse over time, ultimately resulting in his death somewhere between August 5th and August 14th. Then came a cover-up, the fabricated kidnapping story, the false police reports, the community-wide search for a child prosecutors believe was already dead. Understanding this case requires looking at the broader context of this family situation and the warning signs that may have been missed. The case has unsettled residents of Yucaipa and Cabazon, two communities east of San Bernardino where the Haros lived and where Emanuel was last reportedly seen, raising questions about child welfare oversight. These are small communities where people know each other, where a missing child becomes everyone's priority. The fact that Emanuel's disappearance has now been reframed as an alleged murder by his own parents has shattered trust and raised uncomfortable questions about systemic failures. The red flags were there. Jake Haro's 2023 conviction for child cruelty should have been a massive warning sign. Yet the family remained together, and Emanuel was born into a household where documented abuse had already occurred. A week after Jake Haro and wife Rebecca Haro were arrested and charged with the murder of their 7-month-old Emmanuel Haro, the father has spoken out, denying allegations. But denial in the face of mounting evidence often becomes part of the pattern prosecutors will present to the jury. What's particularly troubling is how this case highlights potential gaps in child protection systems. When someone is convicted of child abuse but receives probation instead of prison time, what safeguards exist to protect other children in that household? How are families monitored when there's documented history of abuse? These questions extend far beyond this individual case. Emmanuel Haro's story represents a systemic failure where warning signs existed, where previous abuse was documented, yet a vulnerable infant remained in harm's way. The prosecution isn't just seeking justice for Emanuel. They're making an argument about accountability, about what happens when the system gives second chances to people who abuse children, and about the ultimate price paid when those second chances are allegedly misused. As we approach the crucial hearing dates, the legal strategies on both sides are becoming clear, and the stakes couldn't be higher. A judge scheduled their next settlement conference for October 16th and set a preliminary hearing date for October 28th. These dates represent critical junctures where the strength of the prosecution's case will be tested and where the defense will present their counter-narrative. Prosecuting a murder case without a body is extraordinarily challenging. The prosecution must prove not only that Emmanuel is dead, but that Jake and Rebecca Haro caused his death. They must convince a jury that the evidence is so overwhelming, so conclusive, that there's no reasonable doubt about guilt, even without physical remains. The prosecution strategy appears to rest on several pillars. The timeline showing Emmanuel was likely dead days before being reported missing, Jake Haro's previous conviction for child abuse, the alleged fabrication of the kidnapping story, and what they describe as forensic evidence contradicting the parents' claims. Jake and Rebecca Haro appeared in Riverside Court today as their murder case moves forward, while controversy grows over the judge who once spared Jake prison time in an earlier child abuse case. This adds another layer of complexity to the proceedings as questions mount about whether different judicial decisions in the past might have prevented this tragedy. The defense, meanwhile, faces the challenge of explaining away a previous child abuse conviction while maintaining their client's innocence in Emmanuel's disappearance. They must provide alternative explanations for the timeline discrepancies, the alleged false reports, and the evidence that convinced investigators to pivot from a kidnapping investigation to murder charges. Jake and Rebecca Haro, parents of still missing baby Emmanuel Haro, appeared in court in Riverside on Tuesday, and court observers note the weight of the proceedings. These aren't just legal proceedings. They're about a 7-month-old baby who deserved protection, love, and life. The Emmanuel Haro case forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about child protection, systemic failures, and the price of second chances given to the wrong people. Consider this sequence of events. Jake Haro abuses one child and receives probation instead of prison. The family remains intact. A new baby, Emanuel, is born into this household. According to prosecutors, that baby endures ongoing abuse and ultimately dies. The parents then allegedly fabricate an elaborate kidnapping scenario, triggering a massive law enforcement response and community search effort. Each step represents a failure to adequately punish initial abuse, a failure to protect subsequent children, a failure to recognize the escalating danger, and ultimately, the failure to save Emmanuel's life. District Attorney Mike Hestrin said the evidence shows that baby Emanuel endured ongoing abuse that ultimately took his life. Our office is committed to ensuring that justice is done for this child and that his short life is not forgotten. This commitment to justice extends beyond securing convictions. It's about ensuring that Emmanuel's death catalyzes meaningful changes in how we identify, monitor, and respond to child abuse situations. The communities of Yucaipa and Cabazon, which mobilized to search for Emmanuel, now must grapple with the possibility that their efforts were manipulated, that they were unknowingly participating in a cover-up orchestrated by the very people they were trying to help. This case also highlights the crucial importance of taking child abuse seriously the first time it occurs. The decision to give Jake Haro probation instead of prison time for his previous conviction may have created the conditions that led to Emmanuel's death. How many other families are currently in similar situations? How many other children might be at risk because initial abuse wasn't adequately punished or addressed? As we await the upcoming hearings in October, one thing remains painfully clear. A 7-month-old baby is gone, and his body has never been found. Whether through tragic accident, systematic abuse, or deliberate harm, Emmanuel Haro's short life has ended, and his parents stand accused of causing his death. The prosecution believes they have built an airtight case showing premeditated murder and elaborate cover-up. The defense maintains their client's innocence and will presumably argue that the evidence is insufficient to prove murder beyond a reasonable doubt. But beyond the legal strategies and courtroom arguments lies a fundamental question about our responsibility to protect the most vulnerable among us. Emmanuel couldn't speak for himself, couldn't call for help, couldn't escape the situation prosecutors say led to his death. Think about this as you go about your day. a child was reported missing, triggering a massive search effort involving hundreds of people and countless resources. Yet investigators now say it was all a carefully constructed lie designed to cover up what they believe was the murder of that same child by his own parents. Our focus remains on locating Emmanuel, law enforcement stated, and that search continues even as the murder case proceeds. Because Emmanuel deserves to be found. He deserves a proper burial. His short life deserves to be remembered with dignity, not as a footnote to an alleged crime. The hearings ahead will determine whether Jake and Rebecca Haro spend the rest of their lives in prison for murder or whether they walk free to rebuild their lives. But regardless of the legal outcome, Emmanuel Haro will never come home. What do you think? Is this an airtight prosecution case? Or could there be shocking twists ahead as we learn more about the evidence? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to True Crime Chronicles so you don't miss our coverage of the October hearings. Because in cases like this, the truth has a way of emerging, and justice for Emmanuel Haro may finally be within reach. Subscribe now, and let's continue seeking justice together.